Welcome everyone, good afternoon, and welcome to the first edition of this city series. Welcome to the city of The Hague. My name is Charlotte Schans and I'm the moderator for today, but also the director of Placemaking Europe. Before we get started, I have a few household messages for you to convey too. Please keep your microphones on mute if you're watching online, and it's very much recommended to put your screen on speaker view on the upper right corner. And if you have questions for the speakers here for later in the discussion, please put them in the chat and the team will make sure to get them to me. And it's also good for you to realize that this session will be recorded, so it's also available for later use. I want to introduce you to this new exciting series that we are developing. So on behalf of Placemaking Europe, the network of 4,000 placemakers around Europe, and the city of The Hague, one of the most innovative cities at the moment, pioneering a city-wide placemaking approach, we welcome you to this new series that we will keep occurring in the coming 3 months. With this session, we also launch a city network. We're inviting cities to exchange and help boost the impact of placemaking on how cities are shaped. And we're very honored to do so today. The idea is as follows: every time the city of The Hague invites a few cities that have developed innovative approaches. And today we have the pleasure to invite the city of Pontevedra, which is a coastal city in the northwest of Spain, and the city of Helsingborg in the south of Sweden, a waterfront city as well. Today's topic will be about healthy cities, and in particular about how we pioneer healthy cities with a community of different stakeholders. So the city working together with housing corporations, with residents, to create a healthier city. And also with us today, beyond the speakers that represent the cities, we have the Netherlands Public Health Authority, the GGD, who will reflect on the city's approaches. And it will be a very full program, I promise that, so with lots of flash presentations. But we love to keep some time for you to ask questions, so do drop them in the chat and the team will make sure that I can direct them to the speakers. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce the project lead at the City of The Hague for the Livable City, Joost van Oosterwijk, who will tell us all about the city's approach. Welcome, Joost.
Thank you, Charlotte. Really excited to join this first event on placemaking, the first one of a series for the next couple of years. Before I start, I think it's fun to say that we are actually now at a secondary school in an area in Den Haag called Southwest. It's an area I will tell more about later on in this presentation, but which will be the focus of today. This is the speakers of today. Me, I'm the project leader, Livable City. Moa Sundberg, she's working for Helsingborg. Annabel Gullias, Pontevedra, and Hans Janssen from the Public Health Authority, Netherlands. And I've heard from colleagues that there are a lot of countries joining us today. Countries from Europe, France, UK, Germany, Spain, and I think I forget some countries, sorry for that. And also from more far from Europe, Canada I've heard. So really welcome for you guys. This is the agenda for today. I'm going to give a short introduction, and after that we are going to learn from 2 European cities, from Helsingborg and from Pontevedra. And after that, Hans Janssen from the Public Health Authority in the Netherlands will give a reflection on that, and we will end with some questions and discussion. If you have questions, put them in the chat, and we will pick up some questions from the chat and start the discussion later this hour. First, what is placemaking? Not everyone who will join this conference has heard of this concept, and I think a definition is good to start with. Placemaking for us is an approach of building communities around a place, where people are invited to reimagine and reinvent public spaces collectively. What is central in this definition is the involvement of inhabitants. For us, for the City of The Hague, that's a really important thing. That's also the reason why we are now in the neighborhood, where we're trying to improve the public space together with the inhabitants. As said, The Hague is a member of Placemaking Europe, and this event is the first of a series. Today we are going to focus on the theme of health. How can we make public space into a more healthy environment? We decided to choose this topic because there are some facts, I think, which are quite, well, clear why we have chosen for this topic. Let's start with the overweight in our city. 49% of the people in The Hague are overweight. I think that's quite a percentage, and it's quite problematic. But also from a more mental health view, it's a fact that more than half of the people in The Hague feels moderate to very lonely. I think that's even more impressive for me. I was known for the fact that there are quite a lot of overweighted people in our city, but this fact of loneliness is quite striking for me. And in the more vulnerable parts of our city, people have a quite lower healthy life expectancy. I was shocked by the difference of more than 12 years for men when you compare more vulnerable parts of the city compared to the more rich parts of the city. So the theme of health inequality is something we really have to work on, in my opinion. And from my point of view, I think that the way the physical environment is designed influences how often people will walk, bicycle, meet each other, and/or sport. And earlier this week, I joined a conference on walking, and there was a researcher from a Norwegian researcher, and he told us that people will walk longer when there are commercial or social functions near the routes, and when there's a variance in views. So there's a difference of 15 till 25% of how often people will walk. I think that's really remarkable, and for me it's a proof that physical environment influences directly health. So what is a healthy environment? For me, for the city of The Hague, an environment in which the public space invites you to move, to meet other people, where the environmental quality is good. Think of low emissions of exhaust gases, for example. Healthy food is near, and the public space is climate proof. And I think that when people themselves can go design the public space, the chances of a sustainable public space, which leads to a more healthy behavior, are higher. Now we are in Den Haag Southwest. That's an area in the city of The Hague, which is a more vulnerable part of the city. But it's quite a big part. There are living 70,000 inhabitants with relatively low incomes and a high unemployment rate. And also a high amount of different nationalities. And as said before, a quite lower healthy life expectancy, a difference of more than 12 years for men. It's not all problematic here in this area. I think there are a lot of chances to improve this environment in a more healthy way. For now, it's also this area is also a very green designed area with nice parks, the Zuiderpark, and a lot of sports fields. Some pictures. On the left, you'll see the area. It's built after the Second World War, with its typical architecture. And well, for people who are interested in the map, it's on the right. Den Haag Southwest consists of 3 areas. Bouwlust, Vrederust, Morgenstond, Zuiderpark, Moerwijk, Zuiderpark. A healthier environment in Den Haag Southwest. I think there's a big chance because there will be quite a development the next decades prospected in the Hague Southwest. 10,000 new houses will be built until 2040. And there is this big opportunity to redevelop this area at the same time into a more healthy environment, together with the people who are actually living there and are going to use that environment. And well, one of the things you can think of is that the car should be more a guest in this area, and walking and bicycling should be priority. We're going to learn from Pontevedra more about it later on. And another interesting thing is that many buildings in Den Haag Zuidwest have inner gardens. Gardens which are not always used often or frequently, but makes a great opportunity to make it into a more healthy environment together with people who are living there. This is well, I would say an inner garden with well, moderate quality. I think there's room for improvements. And this is actually one of the initiatives in Den Haag Zuidwest to make an inner garden into a food garden together with the inhabitants. And I've learned that there are more than 70 inner gardens in Den Haag Zuidwest. This is one of them, redeveloped with the inhabitants, so 69 to go. And to do that, to redevelop Den Haag Zuidwest and our whole city into a more healthy environment, we hopefully can learn from other European cities. So I would like to continue to our next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joost, and we'll be joined by you in the discussion later on, and hopefully we can ask some questions to you as well. But for that, I would love to introduce someone who's with us virtually here from Sweden today, from the city of Helsingborg, Moa Sandberg, and she is a city strategist specialized on the city of Helsingborg's action plan for safety in public space. And she will tell us all about the efforts of the city to create more equitable public spaces, which of course has a strong alignment with public health issues. So welcome, Moa, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. So we know that neighborhood safety has repeatedly been shown to be associated with the health and well-being of the residents, and crime is often to be blamed. But at the same time, numbers in Sweden show that while the numbers of crime are declining, the feeling of safety is growing worse. Next slide. And one definition of my feeling of safety is that it is my assessment of my ability to defend myself if a crime were committed against me, or my ability to handle an uncomfortable situation. And what mostly is done is to improve the feeling of safety is through situational crime prevention. For example, to make sure there's a clear view of sight and to improve lightning. Next slide. But I find that other factors that affect my assessment are often overlooked. For example, my trust in the people I meet, my self-esteem of my own capability. And this is why in Helsingborg, we work with the democratic safety planning and placemaking. We need to have an inclusive approach through a community strengthening program. Next slide. So the first project I will mention is this park in the Boysplatsen, which is, it was an inclusive redesign of a neighborhood park in collaboration with the traffic department to decrease traffic noise. Next slide. So my problem was how do we make an inclusive process during the pandemic? Because group sessions and workshops are generally not popular and people seem to be busy. And we hardly ever reach students and people in their 20s and 30s. Next slide. So the solution was to do 30 minutes one-to-one interviews. And I made through Doodle 30 time slots at different times of day and the week. And we sent out an invite by a postcard to all of the households in the neighborhood. And people had the flexibility to meet me outside in the park or to do it over the phone. And they were also given a 10-year worth of gift card to the shops in the city center to boost the shops that were suffering because of the pandemic. Next slide. And all of the 30 time slots over the course of 3 weeks were fully booked. And the demographic of the people that were interviewed matched the demographic of the area. So we finally reached the 20 and 30-year-olds. Next slide. And the result from the interviews translated into this design. And I designed a larger variety of seating for more types of social interactions. We redesigned the playground to involve a different type of play. And we removed the inner circle of trees to clear the view and added more perennials and colors as people asked for this. And we also, of course, changed the lights and used it as a space-defining feature in the center of the park. And next slide. This is the current status. It's still being built, and to the left you can see the playground, and to the right some of the seatings. Next slide. But as this as health is the main theme of this session, I also wanted to mention the traffic noise innovations involved in this project. And firstly, we have built this wall in the middle of the street, designed especially for Helsingborg, that diffuses and reflects the sound waves, so it has lesser impact. And secondly, on the next slide, we also designed 3 sound showers that are going to be placed among the trees in the park. And when you sit underneath it, it masks the traffic noise and creates a sound bubble when you sit underneath it. I don't know if you can see the sound icon, the one behind controlling the slide. I included an example of the sound. I don't think you can see it. Well, yeah, there it is. No? Oh, it doesn't work. Never mind. Before we go into this project, I also wanted to mention that we changed the water fountain feature in the park because we found that the sound waves correlated with the traffic noise. So it actually enhanced the traffic noise. So we changed that. And the second project is Söderscen at Furutorpsplatsen. This is a pure placemaking project, while the redesign of the park it has a clear start and an ending. And here we wanted to involve people in the placemaking and program of the park from the start, and creating an opportunity to apply for funds for everybody's ideas. And expenses related to the materials were covered, but the time should be based on volunteerism. And they also got support from us to develop their ideas. Most of them have never done an event or project-led project before. And that's also why they don't get money transferred but directly to their accounts, but they make a shopping list and we order the order, or they order and we get sent the invoice. We have also bought some basic equipment for concerts and built a stage that anyone can use for free. Next slide. And next, just click one more time. So this is Christer, and he had an idea to show others how you could repair and take care of your own bike, and he did 2 workshops. Next slide. And secondly, we have Punit, and Punit, she loves books, and her idea was to have an exchange library, book exchange library in the park. So we helped her to take her idea to the finished product, and she also got in touch with an organization that she found that built a bookshelf from completely recycled materials. And lastly, we have Sarah that was granted the cost to showcase her documentation of when the pandemic hit Helsingborg during the spring of 2020. And the photo exhibition was up for 2 months. And we also bought some light bulbs to make this part of the park cozier during nighttime. So that was the 2 examples that I had time to show you during this short time. And I'll give back the scene to people in Netherlands. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Moa, and lovely to hear your experiences. And I believe we have some questions for you later on. But I'd first like to introduce Annabelle Julias, who's the Vice Mayor and Councillor for the Promotion of the City and the Interior of the City of Pontevedra. And she will tell us all about how the city over the past 20 years has achieved to become almost entirely car-free and the effects of that on the healthy environment. And after that, Annabelle has to leave a bit earlier, so we immediately go into a little discussion with her to ask her a few questions. So if you in the audience have questions for Annabelle, please let us know already. Later on, we have the opportunity to chat a bit more with Joost and Moa and Hans. So thank you.
Hola, buenas tardes a todos y a todas. No sé si me escucháis, yo tengo algunos problemas de sonido, pero espero que estéis escuchando al intérprete, a Francisco, correctamente. Bueno, me gustaría, si es posible, poner mi presentación. Thank you so much. Empiezo, ¿verdad? Bueno, un aviso, vamos a pasar directamente vamos a pasar la presentación, podéis darle hacia adelante hasta llegar a la diapositiva que pone Pontevedra, si es posible, para empezar ahí. Y mientras pasáis la diapositiva, quiero explicaros, bueno, daros las gracias por la invitación. Para nosotros es pues un verdadero honor hablar de Pontevedra. Voy a centrar mi exposición en una parte importante, que es qué es lo que hicimos en Pontevedra para cambiar una realidad que no nos gustaba. Pontevedra en 1999 era una ciudad, como casi todas las ciudades del mundo, ¿no? Una ciudad pensada para los coches, un almacén de vehículos en las que la única prioridad era pensar o hacer las ciudades o que los coches estuvieran o tuvieran muchísimo más espacio. Bien, nosotros en 1999 tomamos una decisión que era ¿qué vamos a perseguir? Queremos o lo que queríamos era resolver un problema, y es que queríamos contestar a varias preguntas que para nosotros eran claras. La primera de ellas es ¿quién queremos que mande en el espacio público? ¿Las personas o los coches? ¿Qué importancia tiene el espacio público? ¿Y qué podemos hacer desde una ciudad para cambiar las cosas? Para nosotros la pregunta de la importancia del espacio público era básica. Nosotros creemos que el espacio público es un derecho, y ese derecho para nosotros es tan importante como cualquier otro. Puede sonar tópico, pero realmente es un derecho básico para desenvolver nuestra vida, porque al final estamos preocupados por el medio ambiente y hay que estar muy preocupados por el medio ambiente, no me malinterpretéis, pero realmente no nos preocupamos del aire que respiramos diariamente en nuestras ciudades. Podéis pasar las diapositivas súper rápido porque ya estoy en la mitad de la diapositiva de la presentación, así que no os preocupéis, y si no podéis seguir las diapositivas, da igual, sigo exponiendo sin el soporte. Bien. Decía que el espacio público era un derecho. Y por último nos quedaba contestar a una pregunta, es ¿quién tiene las competencias para cambiar las cosas en el espacio público? En el Estado español, los ayuntamientos tenemos plenas competencias en la ordenación urbana de la ciudad. Por lo tanto, hacer o no hacer cosas para mejorar nuestro hábitat es una responsabilidad que no, bajo nuestro punto de vista, no podemos eludir, no podemos olvidar. Llegamos a este punto. Pontevedra es una ciudad pequeña del noroeste del Estado español, es una ciudad de 84.000 habitantes, pero que recibe continuamente, por motivos laborales o por diferentes motivos, por estudios y demás, a cerca de 200.000 personas del área de influencia, del área provincial. Bien, teniendo en cuenta esta realidad, teniendo en cuenta que nosotros tenemos una población flote muy importante, tuvimos que tomar ciertas decisiones para cambiar la realidad que nos rodeaba, para cambiar la propia fisonomía de la ciudad. Y es por eso que decidimos pensar y actuar. Y esta actuación pasaba por devolverle a las personas su espacio vital. Y dentro de esto nosotros buscamos en muchísimas fuentes y buscábamos también la receta mágica, pero estudiando todos los teóricos, todas las teóricas, Jane Jacobs, Appleyard, Kant, lo que decidimos es volver a reinterpretar toda esa literatura y adaptarla a nuestro modelo. ¿Y cómo adaptábamos esa literatura a nuestro modelo? Pues la receta mágica es invertir las prioridades de movilidad en una ciudad y poner en primer lugar a la persona y después a los vehículos. Esto para nosotros es como la receta básica con la que rediseñábamos los espacios urbanos. Bien, dentro de este rediseño pasaba fundamentalmente por una premisa, y es que asumir que los tráficos en una ciudad no se mejoran, no se pueden arreglar. Para solucionar los problemas de tráfico de una ciudad, lo que tenemos que hacer es prescindir del tráfico innecesario o hacer desaparecer el tráfico que nos sobra. Nosotros establecimos una tipología de 3 tipos de tráfico. El tráfico de paso es el tráfico que cruza la ciudad si no tiene ningún propósito. El tráfico de agitación es ese tráfico que está buscando aparcamiento constantemente pero que no aporta nada. Y por último, el tráfico de destino. El tráfico de destino era el tráfico que realmente nos interesa para hacer que la ciudad funcione. Aquí estoy, esa es justo la diapositiva. Ese tráfico de destino es el tráfico que va a hacer que las personas porque pues, si pueden, can you please stop the slides, please? Thank you. El tráfico de destino es el tráfico que decía que nos interesa. Son aquellas personas que necesitan introducir su vehículo privado para hacer algún recado o hacer algún trámite. Bien, ese tráfico lo mantuvimos en la ciudad. Por lo tanto, cuando escucháis que en Pontevedra es una ciudad sin coches, eso no es cierto. En Pontevedra existen los coches, pero solamente dejamos pasar a los que realmente nos interesan. Please, can you put next slide? Otro de los aspectos más resaltables era el límite de velocidad. Tenemos que generar ciudades seguras y para eso es importante limitar la velocidad y instalar elementos que puedan funcionar como disuasorios de las velocidades. En nuestro caso serían pasos sobreelevados que aparte de tener una imagen conceptual diferente, es la persona la que sigue en su propio espacio y es el coche el que invade el espacio dedicado a las personas, pues obviamente tienen una componente de reducción de la velocidad. Pontevedra fue la primera ciudad europea en que limitó su velocidad a 30 km por hora en todas las vías de titularidad municipal. Can you put the next slide, please? Bueno, en todo caso, todas estas medidas producieron un efecto importante sobre la propia ciudad. Voy a resaltar resultados que yo creo que son importantes. En Pontevedra dignificamos los espacios públicos. Dignificamos los espacios públicos. Ahora la gente está orgullosa de ir caminando. Next slide, please. También reducimos el volumen de tráfico de una forma importante al reducirlo y al reducir el tráfico. Como veréis, reducimos en un 53% en todo el municipio, en un 77% en el anillo y en un 10%. Demostramos que los coches que son necesarios para entrar en la ciudad son muchos menos de los que nos dicen. Con 7.000 coches entrando en la ciudad simplemente se consiguen mejores resultados. Can you put next slide, please? Bien, y tenemos uno de los mejores datos y es uno de los datos que más nos enorgullecen, que es que en Pontevedra desde el año 2011 no se produjo ningún muerto por atropello en las vías de nuestra ciudad. Bien, es un resultado que merece la pena trabajar y hablar de elementos que mejoren la seguridad viaria para hacer ciudades más vivibles. Y por último, me gustaría resaltar dos efectos más. El primero de ellos sería la disminución en un 67% de emisiones de CO2, lo que hace que la ciudad esté muchísimo más respirable, y el incremento demográfico de la ciudad. Incrementamos población en un 33%. De nuevo, por invitarnos y deciros que en Pontevedra lo que hicimos fue tomar decisiones políticas, crear políticas públicas que mejorasen la calidad de vida y no dejar de creer en que éramos capaces de hacer ciudades diferentes, ciudades alternativas y ciudades más saludables y más vivibles. Muchísimas gracias, y si tenéis alguna pregunta trataré de responderlo en la parte final.
Thank you so much, Annabelle. And just to assure you, we could hear your presentation perfectly, and it was very inspiring. So thank you for that. I'm allowing the audience to ask some questions in the chat so that the team can tell me. But in the meantime, I do have a question for you, because I know that this took a lot of political decision makership to get this excellent approach come through. But I know that you also had some surprising responses from citizens who may have been against this, because I think a lot of people working on cities right now, they know that pedestrianizing areas or getting rid of parking spots in city districts may stir up a heated debate normally. But I know that you've seen those in Pontevedra, but you've also seen very surprising results and reactions from citizens. Can you tell us a little bit about those? Okay, sorry guys, there's been some technical hiccups, as you can see. So in the meantime, we're going to see if Annabelle can answer the question through the translation. But let's move on to the next speaker, because we have another esteemed guest. This is Hans Jansen. He's working for the GGD here in the Netherlands, which is the Public Health Authority. And he will reflect on what he's heard about these cities and how the Public Health Authority looks at a healthy city. Welcome, Hans.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Well, I was under the impression that also my presentation is there it is, I see. Okay, so as mentioned, I'm with the Public Health Service or Authority. It's GGD in the Netherlands, in the region of Haaglanden, where also the municipality of The Hague is in. And well, we and my department are involved in all kinds of public health issues related to the living environment. We're one public health authority, but there are 25 of those in the Netherlands, and in a joint effort of all those 25 public health authorities, we developed a document to assist in the advice we give to municipalities all over the Netherlands in regional developments, city developments, infrastructure, and also all those kinds of things. And well, the document is sort of a combination of the most important things we use in our advice. Next slide, please. It's called the core values for a healthy living environment. Well, in essential, it's for professionals. It's meant to inspire, and it's meant also for input for conversations we from public health perspective have with the local authorities from municipalities mainly. There are 10 core values, and they come with a set of guiding principles, and for each principle we have a list of possible measures that can be taken. They're general, but of course in practice you will have customized solutions for each different situation where they will be applied. Next slide, please. I will give a short overview of these core values that are in 3 different chapters. called the living environment. They're in Dutch, of course. You see in the picture, you see kernwaarden en gezonde leefomgeving, which is a document in Dutch, but I'll present it in English, of course. There are 3 chapters: living environment, mobility, and buildings. Next, please. I'll give an overview of the core values. First, for living environment, we advise that there should be a spatial separation between residential areas and busy traffic, of course, because of air pollution and noise mainly, subjects that the previous 2 speakers also have mentioned. More or less for the same reason, large businesses and factories and installations should be at a distance from residential areas, also to avoid health impact from those facilities. Next, please. Yes, living environment again, continued. We say, well, children should be raised in a smoke-free environment, and smoke-free is, well, you can view that from different perspectives. It has to do with smoking, of course. We promote the smoke-free generation, but also it has also to do with the exhaust of, for instance, the wood-burning stoves and so on. Well, another thing is places for people should be attractive and available for everyone, close and accessible to their homes. Furthermore, the living environment should contribute to a healthy body weight. I'll come to, well, these aspects later. And functions like living and working and amenities are well mixed in a residential area. That's from a public health perspective the most optimal thing. Yes, next is the chapter of mobility, where we say, well, the active transport with walking and cycling should be the default in both in policy as well as in design and the use of the infrastructure. And well, of course, that's for the short distance. Residential areas are well connected by e-bike routes and public transport for more longer distances. Then our chapter for buildings, all kinds of buildings. We say the indoor climate should be comfortable and healthy. Of course, well, at least in the Netherlands, we stay like 80% of the time indoors. So it's very important that we also indoor have a healthy climate. Then a subject which is especially important near, well, the busy places, roads and so on. We say at least one side of a building or one side of a house should be attractive, where you can relax, which is low noise and well, and preferably with a view on a green area. And the last thing I will mention is that that it has more to do with the kind of housing that is available. It should be sufficient and affordable and life course adaptable. Then I'm going to zoom in on what we mentioned about living environment. Children are raised in a smoke-free environment. This looks like a slide back, or next, please. Then the next, please. Because it's a repetition, I will focus a little bit more on those aspects, where we have the guiding principles. For instance, for smoke-free, well, I already mentioned that it has to do with smoking as well as wood burning, which is both. We know that the air pollution is still also in the Netherlands the major environmental factor that is impacting health for our citizens. So it's still well, very important to work on cleaner air, sorry. Then I mentioned the attractive spaces, places, where the guiding principles are that we should make safe places. Of course, Mohan also mentioned that for Helsingborg, which is where safety is an important subject. It should be clean and beautiful. Well, also a couple of examples we've seen: comfortable and accessible. Now, the next is that there are people have different needs, so places should also be both available lively places where you can meet and quiet places where you can relax. All those kind of places should be available. Natural environment is important, and the adaptation to a changing climate. Then, of course, a nice place is good, but it's also important that people use it, and for that it's very important to involve local residents in the planning, the development, even the realization, the management, and the evaluation of those places. So that's sort of an ownership question. And of course, there are some local initiatives, and it's important to promote those. Next, please. Another thing is the healthy body weight. Was one of the guiding principles. One of the core values I mentioned. Well, for that aspect, it's important that the spatial design stimulates both active transport, the walking and cycling I mentioned earlier, as well as sporting and playing. It should provide easy access to healthy food. And also here, it's important to involve local residents. Next, please. Well, that was my short introduction. I think we in the previous examples from Helsingborg and Pontevedra, we saw a lot of these issues that I've listed here that were mentioned. What I see as the major challenges, for instance, in Den Haag Southwest, that Joost introduced in his introduction, are the car. Of course, in Pontevedra, this is well, we've seen the problems from 20 years ago, and the improvement that has been reached over a period of 20 years, which, well, reminds you that it's a long way to go, but we have to at least take the first step if you want to change something. And what we see in the city of The Hague and a lot of cities in the Netherlands is population growth. So more people and more houses needed, and it's quite a challenge to provide for enough green public space. Okay, thank you. That was my presentation for now.
Thank you so much, Hans, for your inspiring overview of these principles of a healthy environment. In the meantime, Annabelle Julias had to leave as we expected, and she's excusing herself for the technical problems that we had. But of course, as we know, with this first session, we're pioneering all. So hopefully next time everything will run a bit smoother on your end. But I'm here back with Joost, and Moa is still online with us, Hans is still online with us, and in the meantime we had some nice questions from the audience that I would love to touch upon in the last minutes. The first question was asked by Manon from Urban Sync. Welcome, Manon. And she was asking, how do you see the role of citizens in all of this? Basically the question that I also asked to Annabelle before she had to leave. But how do you see the role of citizens or inhabitants in all of this, in particular from the perspective of inclusive placemaking? And maybe we can quickly start with Moa, because we've heard you talk about that already, but also maybe reflecting on what you've heard from the other cities.
Well, we try to include the citizens in as much work as we can, because we see that's where we need to use our time. And so basically it's everything. I don't know if that answers the question. And it was interesting to see how well, or for example, Hans' presentation, it validates everything we've been fighting for here in Helsingborg, and how we are right on track. That's how I feel.
Beautiful, thank you, Moa. And Joost, to you, the same question, the role of citizen in all this?
In all of this, yeah. Well, it's a broad question. For me, it's still a bit of a struggle because, for example, we now are working on a future vision on Den Haag Southwest. And last week we had 3 events with inhabitants. And what we saw was that it's a particular group of people who will join those events. Mostly elderly people, mostly white people. And for us the challenge is how can we invite other people to join. So I was so excited to hear the story of Sweden, of Helsingborg, how they, well, persuaded 20 years and 30-year-olds to join.
Yeah. So I hear it's also still very much of a challenge. I have to take the microphone to hear Moa again. But Moa, do you have some advice for the city of The Hague, learning from your experience?
Well, we are learning how important it is to always bring with us someone that knows Arabic, in especially one area where we are working. So try to have a broad group with you, so you can reflect the demographic of the people that you want to talk to.
Yeah.
That's what we are trying to, where we are trying to become better.
Yeah, so Moa is saying somebody who speaks the local language.
Yeah.
Arabic can be
Yeah.
good in the migrant community.
Good tip, yeah.
Okay. Another question I would actually like to address to Hans, because somebody also asked, how do you actually translate this technical knowledge about, for example, air pollution to the level of residents to actually include them in the processes? Maybe the Public Health Authority has ideas on that. Hans?
Well, of course, we well, in these planning processes for city development, for instance, our main task is to advise the authorities. But we also have a task as a public health authority also to inform, well, normal people, as I, if I may say so. But well, what well, for instance, air quality is we answer questions from inhabitants. That's maybe that's the best way to put it. For instance, for other subjects like indoor climate, we also promote the best way to manage your house. For instance, when you're living in it, that's where we come in and do it. We give actively in introductions during meetings and so on. But we have then people doing that who speak the language of the, I mean not the language, but use the words that the inhabitants understand. We have, for different languages, we have, for instance, small tutorials, movies on our website where for in Arabic and Turkish and Polish and those kind of things.
So literally the different languages, but also the tone of voice probably that residents tend to use more than professionals. Thank you so much, Hans. Maybe just to wrap up this session, because we're nearing the end. So here in the city of The Hague, your big challenge, of course, is how to actually co-create these strategies for the inner courtyards that you showed in the beginning. So I was wondering to ask Moa, maybe from her experience, like where would she start, or what would she do? And then maybe for you to also reflect on the next steps before we move into the final part. So Moa.
So where would I start with what?
Sorry, so the challenge of the City of The Hague is to redevelop these inner courtyards with the help of residents using a placemaking approach. And if you were up for that challenge in Helsingborg, where would you start?
Well, I would start by networking and maybe find some, not associates, but maybe some people that can lead the way into and create the relationships that you need. So focus on relationships, and also find out what kind of people that live there, and try to see what gives them, what is the interest, why do they want to come and use their time, and focus on their, even though it's their own living environment, why should they spend time to do it? What's their goal?
Yeah, thank you so much. And then Joost, what are the next steps?
Well, a very concrete next step is that this evening we will have a dinner. This dinner is prepared by people who are living in Den Haag Southwest. And together with our inhabitants and with the housing corporations and members of the City of The Hague, we are going to discuss the question, how can we redevelop those inner gardens in a way that it's, the wishes of the inhabitants are in a way taken with this development. So tonight is the first step. There are already really good examples which we are going to learn from. But what I found really interesting today was this example from Sweden. I think this doodle way of participating, I found it very inspirational. And from Pontevedra, wow, this decrease in cars in the city, it's, I would say, amazing. I'm wondering if it's going to be possible in The Hague, but well, maybe. I don't know how the future will be.
It's good to be ambitious, right?
Good to be ambitious, indeed. Yeah.
And I regret that we couldn't hear it from Annabelle, but I know at least if she will be back or we'll get the chance to visit Pontevedra, it's very interesting that they've shown with the track record that there was some pushback, of course, from residents who thought it was going to be something that was only going to work against them. But over time, they also saw what the quality of life improvements were in the city. So that really changed the position of many people, and also showing that it's good for local economy, for example, and all these different assets that were met. Really changed the position, and now it really feels like a joint project by everybody involved in Pontevedra. We couldn't touch upon that due to the technical issues, but I can assure you that that's part of the strategy in Pontevedra as well. Yeah, thank you so much, and I think with that, we'd love to also thank you watching from home to this first edition of the Placemaking series, and we hope to be back in December. With the next theme and some other cities to invite. And in the meantime, I would love to also invite I would love to thank on our behalf Annabelle Julius, Moa Sundberg and Hans Janssen for their participation. And of course, Joost van Oosterwijk. And we hope to see you next time.